So you may remember about a week ago, last Wednesday, crime gang leader Charalambos Theologou, nicknamed Bobby the Greek, was shot dead in a Starbucks, at a Starbucks restaurant in Laval. Remember, the story was all over the news that day. We discovered, of course, once police told us a little bit more about him, he'd had previous criminal convictions for everything from drug trafficking to conspiracy to firearm possession, and had more recently been involved in extorting restaurateurs in the city as well. But while I think it's fair to say most people looked at his killing, criminal underword, payback, one person read that news and reacted very differently. His former high school teacher, James Watts, who's on the line right now. Mr. Watts, thanks so much for your time this afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Let me ask you, if you will, I read what you wrote, and for people who did, it's one of those situations where you kind of, I guess in your case, someone who was his teacher and principal for a while at school, try to figure out where he went wrong or where you went wrong or how things might have worked out differently. What was it for you?
Yeah, it was probably a combination of both. I knew him as Bobby. He was a 16-year-old boy. He was with us at our school at Education Plus for about 3 years. He was very active. He was very curious. He was a bit of a class clown, but he was very respectful when he was in our school. So he was your average 17-year-old. Of course, he came to us because he was struggling academically at his previous school, and that's a group of students that we cater to at Education Plus. I had been tracking him, through his life, like we do with a lot of our students, to see how they're doing. And most of our students do, very well, go on to Cégep and university and find a trade or open a business. And I knew that he wasn't on the right track. I didn't realize that he was so deep into all the illegal things that he was doing. So I had met him a couple of times after he graduated from us. Hoping and wishing and against all odds that he was going to be on the right path. And then I hear and see that this event that happened last week at Starbucks, and I was horrified for everything, every part of that. And mostly, I think, I think about my feelings and my sense of grief. It's a grief for a wasted life, a life that could have gone in a completely different direction. I always imagine that if he had put all his talents and his energies and his strengths towards something good, he would have been a dynamic force and a force for good in society.
As I hear you say that, I think to yourself, to some degree, I guess you kind of blame yourself for not getting involved even more, although you obviously could only get involved to a point. At some point, he's out of school and, that's pretty much it. You also point out, and I think this is interesting too, because maybe people assume this was not the case. You wrote he came from a good home with parents who cared deeply for him and invested in his education. They sent him to a private school, yet it didn't work out. And I wonder from your perspective, as someone, who dealt with him directly, you try because you realize that this is someone, as you said, he had a lot of curiosity, a bit of a class clown. Some of those people go on, as you said, and have very successful careers, whatever they happen to choose. Did you try to push him? Are you able to push someone like that in a particular direction? And when do you realize that, you can't?
I never believe that I can't. Every student that walks in our door, I believe in, and they're in my classes, and I will never give up on them. So there's never a time where I believe that somebody's too far gone. Talking about what can you do, what different solutions, and I've had so many people contact me and say that James, it's only one student. You've had success with so many other students in your school, but one's too many. And you think about the havoc that Bobby was able to rain down on parts of Montreal, and think the other lives that have been impacted negatively by some of his actions. So there is no one answer to that, Aaron. I think that if we all get together and reflect on it, and one of my biggest things I think that I've seen over many years of teaching is that we need to communicate more. I think we work in silos. I think that social workers and police officers and schools and parents and friends need to all work together when we see somebody like Bobby and say we need to continue to influence him, because our choices are our choices, but they're not just made in isolation.
Yeah.
They're influenced by our life experiences and the people that we surround ourselves with.
By the way, I will point out, this idea of the community coming together in this particular case, right? You mentioned you did bring in community police officers to speak to him directly. It's not as if you didn't do what you thought you needed to do or wanted to do to try, enact some kind of a change. you kind of wonder, when do you begin to realize that's falling on deaf ears, or does that ever come across?
Yeah, again, for us at Education Plus, we're never going to say that this is a lost cause. We're never going to give up. So it's, I don't think it happens, and I think you keep on trying.
Mm-hmm.
Bringing police officers in his grade. I remember one of the things we did. We took a trip by train to Jasper, Alberta, and we sat in the Dome car. We talked. We had conversations. He was great with us. Very relational. I mean, he kept all of his nefarious deeds far away from the school. But once he graduated, there were times where our paths would cross as far as just conversations. He had a relative that came to our school at one point. I guess I lost some of my influence, and I suppose the school did too. Sure. And some of the other influences had greater power over him.
You also mentioned, I found this really pretty amazing too, years later, because you lose track of people once they leave, right? You say One of his relatives graduated from your school, and he attended the graduation, but when he arrived, he was wearing a tracking device, right? So he'd already been in trouble. I'm just curious, at that point, did you have discussions with him? Did you talk to him?
I did. We sat down for quite a while. He had to leave. He had a curfew, but he had to leave before the end of the graduation. But I said to him, Bobby, we need to talk. He gave me the story that his life is on track, that he was married, that he was having children. These are important, Bobby. I tell him these are things that you need to be on the right track for. You need to be a role model for your kids. But then I see that the tracking device. I said, Bobby, what's this about? He said, No, I'm at the end of it. This is it. Mm-hmm. And so I want to believe this, right? And maybe it's one of my faults of being too optimistic.
Yeah, well, we all want to be optimistic, right? You want to think that when someone says that's behind me, they're actually telling you the truth. But I'm sure if we went back and looked at cases like this, most of those situations probably turned out to be anything but. But then again, I mean, I kind of feel like I'm obligated to ask you. You sound to some degree like you blame yourself here a little bit, do you?
Yeah, don't know if I blame myself. I like to reflect on what I could have done differently, and not so much. I obviously can't go back and change any of those things, but what can I do differently now when I meet the next Bobby in my school setting, and say, what else can I try? And maybe I'm asking that question to other people who work with adolescents and young people to say, let's put our brains together and see if there's something that I'm missing or somebody else is missing. And I think the answer lies in us all coming together and having a discussion. I don't know if there's a single answer. I think there's a group answer there.
It's hard, though, isn't it, when you think about it? You can do everything you can do in sort of the confines of school. And then once they're out of school, it's up to parents, it's up to the community. And obviously in this case, this particular person fell between the cracks and it ended up costing him his life. So I don't know. Have you heard from other people after this, other students, other people you had dealt with or who knew him? Did they reach out?
Oh, yeah. I've had so many calls from his graduating class from our school, from some of his friends who have gone on to live very productive lives. Mm-hmm. I've heard, obviously, from a lot of fellow teachers, and they've been very supportive. I'd like to think that if I ever get this idea that I don't sense some responsibility there, that I'll go and do something else, because we are responsible for the students that come in to our schools. And I don't think our responsibility ends when they graduate. I think we're planting seeds, and we need to do our best to nurture those things and follow them up as much as we can.
Look, I know it's difficult. I know you have a lot of students, but any time you hear about one of them and this is how their life ends, I know it's a difficult thing to have to adjust to and basically realize, that, I knew this kid. I wish things would have worked out differently. You sound like a very caring individual. So I know this must have been difficult for you to deal with. I thank you so much for your time today. Very much appreciate it.
And thank you for highlighting this on your show, because it's something our hope always is that we somehow Bobby didn't quite do what he's supposed to do, but it's our next group of students that we're working with that we're trying to make sure they stay on the right path.
Understood. Mr. Watts, thanks again. I do appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
The newest tracks. Let's go. New music. And the next big thing.
Always on the new music first.
Your first place to hear it all.
'Cause you gon' like it, love it, wanna play it twice. Playing now.
iHeart New Music. Your digital station for brand new drops, fresh finds, and tomorrow's bangers.
I think we need something new.
Discover iHeart New Music. Always fresh, always first. Stream now on the free iHeartRadio app.